Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this little guy. This is the GT by Reverie watches. So, first off, I want to thank Reverie for sending this little guy along. That's right, this was sent to me directly by the manufacturer for free as a review sample. This means two things. This is probably going to be the best quality-controlled Reverie watch that is ever shipped from a factory, and it also means that I've had to think very carefully about how to avoid misbiasing my review, and I told them when they sent it that I would be giving an honest review. Talking about the good, the great, the bad, and the ugly. They still sent it along, so, there you go. But I just want to be very open about that. That's the case here. And the other thing is that this doesn't tell me much about consistency. I've only seen one of these. In fact, I've only really heard of one of these in the wild, and that's the one on the table here. They sell lots of them, I gather, but yeah, so I got nothing there. But let's go ahead and do a size comparison real quick. First off, here it is against another really nice quartz watch. This is the Citizen Signature Eco Drive Octavia guy. Here it is against the Breitling Aerospace, to give you a sense of size there. Here it is against the Omega Seamaster 300 here. And, yeah, I think that'll do for size. And then let's do some actual measurements on this guy, because it's not a super common watch. So, excluding the crown, the case on this guy is about 40 millimeters. Including it, go up to about 44. The lug-to-lug length is not very large on this guy. We are coming in at about 46 millimeters lug-to-lug length. And that's really good for people with smaller hands. The overall thickness on this guy is about 11 millimeters, maybe a little bit more in places, so that's not particularly bad at all. And then the lug width for adding a custom strap or something like that is 20 millimeters. So there you go, that's your size here. Then finally, a quick note on Reverie. This is a Microbrand sort of thing. It is a Singaporean company, actually. They've got a couple of watches out. All of them feature very, very nicely done dials. That seems to kind of be their signature thing. And so let's go ahead and talk about the good, the great, the bad, and the ugly of your little Reverie GT here. First off, on the good side, you know what? I like the lugs. And in fact, that's been the thing that most people have commented on when I've shown them this watch out of curiosity, is the lugs. It's kind of got these horn-shaped lugs. And that's something that you see in some watches, but it's not super common. I mean, much more often you get these kinds of straight lugs on the side of it here that don't have quite that much character. And so I do like seeing that. That's a nice little detail. Next thing, the straps that this ships with. And by the way, there are two straps. There is this little guy here, and then there is this little guy here. And it comes with a deployant clasp, which is nice. And by the way, I have swapped the deployant clasp onto the black from the gray here, but, keep that in mind. But the straps are nice in quality, and they both actually feature a quick release. See this little lever right back here? If you grab this with your fingernail and pull, it will actually pull the strap off of there. So that's just so great. I kind of hope that just becomes the way that straps are done in the future, because it's so much better than using a damn spring bar tool or something like that. And so I appreciate the quick release strap very much, although it can be a little finicky to get back on there. I'm going to fight that for a good little while here. But anyways, these straps with all that are very nice, and the advantage of this guy with all of the holes on it is that actually, even if you've got a relatively small wrist, you can find the hole that works, because the perforation speed holes go all the way through, so you can always get the little tongue of the clasp through there. Come on now, am I gonna get you in there? Oh, you little bugger. Now you're going to watch me fight this. Well, okay, the next thing I can talk about is that the front of this watch here has a sapphire crystal. This is absolutely, there we go. This is absolutely a beautiful thing, because it's going to avoid scratching, and at this kind of a price point, that's something that you really want to see, and adds a little bit of the value to it. Next thing, this actually has a very nice feel on the wrist. I mean, it's not super thick. It's pretty lightweight, at least all things considered. Here, I'll weigh it up here. It's a little weird because it's going to be on a different strap for different people here, but let's go ahead and in ounces here, we are coming in at 2.45 ounces. There you go, show that off. And so that's great. And, it wears nicely. I never really had any complaints. This guy goes under a shirt sleeve, no problem. It's nice. The next thing, this is using what's called a Mecha-Quartz movement. So it is a quartz watch. You can't see it ticking second hand because there's no second hand. We'll get back to that later. But the chronograph is actually running using a mechanical gear train. So although this is quartz, although you can see it's kind of ticking along at a certain rate here, rather than a mechanical chrono, which is using using just a balance wheel underneath there. The mechanical side of it is done using mechanical wheels and mechanical clutches and things like that. That has the advantage of a very nice feel on the button that you press in here, and it also has the instant kind of flyback thing going on, which is a nice little detail that you get from mechanicals. And so basically you end up with a quartz movement where the chrono really feels like a mechanical watch, which is not really necessary at all, but it is kind of cute. And it has, I guess, some advantages, and quartz does have serious advantages. That's honestly the reason I elected to pick one of these guys up for review, or accepted to pick one of these guys up for review, is that there aren't that many really nice-looking quartz dress chronos out there, and so I figured, hey, cool, because quartz is really a better choice, I think, for most people. I've worn a mechanical watch. I know mechanicals, but at the same time, for most people, it's just a better approach. So that's good, the fact that this is a quartz watch at its core. Next thing, the price on this guy is actually, I would say, pretty solid. It is a $400 watch, and you know what? $400 for a very, very nicely finished quartz chronograph is absolutely acceptable. I find that, especially with the Sapphire, especially with the Mecha-Quartz, with the chrono thing, I'm pretty okay with the price point on this guy. So, to me, that's what's good, is that the price is pretty damn solid. It's got a Mecha-Quartz movement, which gives you, it's a quartz watch fundamentally, so you've got all the advantages in durability, longevity, etc. of that. It has a Sapphire Crystal, comes with the two straps, both of which are fine and come with quick release, which is great. It has a nice feel on the wrist. It's got those horned lugs, which I appreciate. So on the great side for me, the dial to me is what's great here, 100%. I mean, seriously, take a look at the detail of this dial. That's nice. That's really nice. It's got a little bit of a guilloche sort of feel to it. And you've got these nice contrasting elements. On the outside here, you've got a sunburst sort of sanded. Here, I'll try and zoom in a little bit more. You've got like a sunbursty sort of thing. So you get that contrast at one area, but then in the center, you see all the independent reflections off the guilloche. Then you got the sunbursts in here. Look, that's just nicely done. You've got the panda aesthetic overall, although they've got some different colors for you in general, which is good. And then I mean, look, overall, the finishing on this watch is frankly nicer than one would really expect. I mean, seriously, this is, and even on the back side of it, you've got a nice little bit of this checkering pattern here is good, and it's plenty reflective. You've got numbered edition on the back here. I mean, look, this is a nice little finishing piece here. So I love, love, love the dial on this guy. This looks really, really nice, and that's what this watch has going for it, is that it looks way better than the price would suggest. So that's what's great, is it's just a beautifully finished watch in a lot of ways. On the bad side, first off, I'm not a big fan of the green seconds hand. I mean, where did green come from on this? There is no other green element to this watch, so it just feels completely and totally out of place. I'd have preferred that as a nice polished silver rather than this just random green painted thing. That's a little weird to me. So that's not great. Next thing, it does not have a seconds hand. When the chronograph is stopped, there is nothing ticking on this guy. There is no way to tell what the time is to second precision here without running the chronograph. I understand that that's a power-saving measure, but doesn't do it for me here. And especially given that they've got this second subdial here, which is just doing 24-hour time, which, by the way, isn't a complication I'm super in love with because, okay, let's see here. It's 8:45. What is it? Is that morning or evening? Well, most people should know, and if you don't know, you look out the damn window and you can kind of tell. So guess what? It's not doing anyone any good. I'd rather have a seconds hand there. Next thing, this is an only 60-minute chronograph. You can see here that I ran the chrono for maybe 3 minutes or so. It's a little hard to read being as small as it is. But after that, it's just going to keep running and running and running, and you'll lose track. So you can only time something up to about an hour. Not a huge deal, but it's not something I'm a big fan of. Next thing, the seconds track is a little hard to read because it's got all these little sub-indices, and the individual seconds aren't really strongly marked beyond that. So it's not the case. You can look down at a glance and figure out exactly what moment it stopped at. Does that super matter? No, but it's a thing. Something that did bother me more about this guy is that there is no date window anywhere on this. And considering that this is a quartz watch, that feels like a little bit of an omission. I mean, they could have put it down here, a 6 o'clock date would have worked great. But they didn't, and that feels a little bit lazy, and it's something that I absolutely missed when wearing this guy. Next thing, the water resistance on this guy is 5 atmospheres. Look, that's okay, I guess, but I really feel like I want a bigger margin of error, even on a dress watch. I mean, 5 atmospheres is something you could probably swim with, you could probably shower with, but as the seals age, that's going to go down and down and down, and you don't want to end up in a position where your watch that used to be fine water resistance-wise is no longer. Not a huge deal, but it's a deal. So that's something to keep in mind here. Again, it's a leather dress watch. I'm probably nitpicking there, but it doesn't bring me any joy. Next thing, speaking of nitpicks, take a look at the lugs here. You can see that it's got these little lines up and, above and below the lugs that are just not really super impressive. It's an area where you can really tell that they did skimp a little bit on the machining. Whereas in most watches, the lugs attach very cleanly to the watch overall. That's not doing it for me. But again, for the price, okay, I guess, but they could do better there. And similarly, these sculpted lugs are not so sculpted from this angle. So, whatever. Next thing, why does this watch have a tachymeter on the outside here? A tachymeter is a way for you to measure the something that happens per hour. So let's say you're driving down the street here, and you start your tachymeter when you hit a mile marker, and maybe you're flying down the street, because I don't want to sit here and watch this for, a bunch of seconds. But you start it when you hit a mile marker, and then you hit another mile marker approximately now. And at that rate of travel between two things, that means you're going 250 miles an hour. Or if you're trying to time your output at a factory or something like that, I'm going to make, 250 of these an hour. Look, a tachymeter is one of those things that is barely useful as it is. Having one on a dress watch is just weird as heck to me. And it just clutters the outside of the dial. I feel like they could have done something much more interesting with this inner index here, rather than just putting a random tachymeter on there. That seems so weird to me. Whatever, not a big deal. Then finally on the bad side, this is an untested watch. I really have no idea how this watch is going to age over time. I don't know how these folks handle warranty or other issues. This is always the concern when you buy from a very small micro brand. Are they going to stand behind this stuff? I would hope so, but it's a random Singaporean, probably a couple of guys in an office someplace, or gals for that matter. And so I just don't know what's going on there, and that always leaves me a little bit concerned, and so I'm going to go ahead and throw that in the bad. So that's the bad to me, is that it is an untested company. It is a dress watch with a tachymeter, which is weird enough. Dress chronos are weird to me, I'm sorry. It's got these weird lines above the lugs, which mean the machining isn't quite where I want it to be. It's got only 5 atmospheres water resistance. There's no date here. The second track's a little hard to read. Only a 60-minute chrono. It's got a 24-hour hand, but no moving seconds hand, which means you can't tell if the watch is dead without looking at it a couple of minutes later. And then this green hand doesn't do a thing for me. So on the ugly side, they mention on their website, and I'm going to go ahead and charge it off camera here, but they mention on the website that they're using superluminova lume, and that's the luminous compound that makes this watch, the hands glow in the dark. And indeed they are, and on the hands, I absolutely believe that. And in fact, it's probably being used over there, but the thing is, the lume is just barely there. You can see here that even after just charging that for half a second there, this is fading very, very rapidly. Let's contrast this with a watch that has lume that's actually worth a damn. This is the Omega Planet Ocean here. And so here we can see that this lume is glowing bright and strong, and this lume is already, you can't see you can't at all see the indices, and the hands are starting to fade. Yeah, you might be able to read the hands late at night, but chances are you can't, as opposed to, again, look at the amount of fading that's gone on here. Not a damn bit of it. That's how much. And so the lume on this guy is very, very disappointing. The indices are unlumed. And then also, I gotta say, this is a little nitpick, but it's absolutely one that kind of bugs me. Let's take a look at these small hands, the chrono hands down here. What you can see is that these are little punched out hands. It looks like a metallized plastic of some variety or another, and you can see even on the back of it where they broke the little hands off the part thing. These hands are the thing that make this watch, that revealed that this is not an expensive watch, because that looks absolutely cheapy down there. I mean, let me see, do I have something around with nicer sub hands? No, not offhand. But the thing is, offhand, I mean, the big hands actually have a little bit of a curvature to them. They've got a nicer polish to them. They're actually, they're true polished metal, whereas these guys just look like chromed plastic. And they are the thing, along with the green hand, that, like I said, makes this watch feel cheap. And I don't like that very much. Then finally, on the bad side, this is a watch that isn't super legible. As I actually, if I pull the crown out here and move the hands around, especially if once they're off the panda dial, in many lighting conditions, the hands kind of have a tendency to disappear very much. So you can't read the time unless the hands happen to be well over these dials here. This is always going to be the danger of having a reflective dial with reflective hands. And this is why so often having a black dial with reflective hands gives you more legibility. But it's a factor. And so very often I found myself having to adjust my the position of the watch on my wrist in order to get the hands in proper, in legible alignment, so to speak. And so I'm not a big fan of that at all. This watch is not super duper legible. I mean, even right now. I mean, look at that. So I don't love that. And so to me, that's the ugly here, is that you've got very little legibility in the hands. The small hands absolutely do look cheap and make this watch look cheaper than it could have otherwise. The loom on here is basically not loom. Final conclusions, this is an interesting piece. It is a quartz dressy watch, which is finished, I think, way better than it has any right to be. For the price point, they're doing really good. Yeah, it's got the small hands, which are just not great. And yeah, there are a couple of areas where they could have done a little bit better. But honestly, they're doing a pretty good job here. And that's impressive. At that level, I do appreciate it. It does have some downsides, though, absolutely. It is from an untested brand. That's always going to be a danger. It's got no date, no second, 60 minutes only. It is not a super legible watch. The loom is kind of a sick joke, and it is clear that they're still learning the details. If you compare this to this watch, which is lists at like $600 off a Citizen, you can see that this is a little bit behind in terms of polishing, in terms of those kinds of things, but it is still very, very nice. The interesting thing about this guy, though, is that it passed the Fiancee Test. Every time I get a watch, I'll show it to her, and she'll just say, "Hey, what do you think?" And she said, "Oh, it's pretty." And then I always ask her, "Well, how much do you think this watch costs?" And she, in this case, said, "About $800. And I said, "How much should it cost?" She said, "About $800. It looks really, really nice." And she, turned it over. She gave it a real once-over. And considering that very, very often she way undershoots things, so, it should be about, $50 or $100, $200, whatever. This one really gave her this sense of quality. I'm not saying that she is the queen of horology or anything like that. In fact, she doesn't really know watches that well. But at the same time, it's very clear to me that she perceived this watch as being really nicely made, and the big reason she gave was the dial. And I can absolutely see that, because this is really, it is impressive. The guilloche here is very nice, and it does make this watch feel a lot nicer at a quick level than some of your other budget pieces like the Longines here. She really didn't see the big cost in this. And considering that this watch is twice the price, more than twice. Yeah, so this is doing something right, 100%. It's not my style. No. I mean, dress watches aren't for me, chronos aren't for me, leather bands aren't for me. Frankly, the only reason I agreed to do this, like I said, is that it is quartz, and I think quartz is a great option, and I love seeing good quartz dress watches. But the thing is, at some level, I do respect what they got going on here. They have made a watch here that looks, especially from across a room or across a table, a whole lot nicer than the price indicates. And it's got a lot of the bonuses that come from quartz, while still getting some of the niceness, namely the chrono feel that you get from a mechanical. And so if you're looking to get a lot of watch from an attractiveness level for a relatively little cash, then you know what? I don't think it's a bad idea to indulge in a little bit of reverie here. So there you go. Hope this has been interesting to you, that this is properly timed. That didn't even make sense. I need to GT heck out of here. All right. Have a good one, everybody. Bye now.